G'day and welcome to the Drive Able podcast, where we discuss all things about driving and safer community transport for people with disabilities and medical conditions. If you haven't done so yet, make sure you go back and listen to the last couple of episodes where we interviewed Amin Akbarian, and these were a robust and informative conversation. And it started to cover the tip of the iceberg with respect to the standards and the compliance requirements for the transport industry when we're talking about disabilities. If you're in the industry, we really recommend that you go back and listen to these episodes. We'll be getting back to him for more in-depth breakdowns of certain parts of the policies and procedures that are out there in the very near future.
G'day everyone, and this is another exciting interview. Actually, this one. In this episode, we will be speaking with Catherine Rae, who is a user of NDIS. She's also a worker within the NDIS scheme, working with various organisations, which she'll tell us about. And she'll talk to us about her journey around getting behind the wheel. She's got a great story. She's really well experienced using the NDIS. She actually supports a lot of other people in terms of gaining all of their funding, maximising their funding. So she's well in the industry, so I'm sure she'll have a lot of helpful info, and I really can't wait to hear about that and the story and tips for the industry. So Brad, are we ready for this?
Yeah, mate, this sounds exciting, this one. I can't wait to hear what tips she's got, so let's get into it.
Let's get into it. Driving is something many take for granted, but when someone has altered ability, then driving or getting out and about in your own car can be challenging. Driving with a disability doesn't mean you have to drive an old clapped out car with farm-like machinery, and relying on a wheelchair doesn't mean waiting for hours and then being in the back of a maxi access cab getting car sick. The Drivable podcast is designed to introduce and explore driving aids for people with disabilities, vehicle modifications, the NDIS, research, medical guidelines, driving techniques, and much, much more. The Drivable podcast is to help you be informed and be in control of your own independence so you can experience freedom through driving safely and reliably. I'm Ali, and with me is Brad, and together we have over 30 years of experience in disability and driving. Enough of the intros, let's get into it.
All right, everybody. In this episode, we're talking to Catherine. Catherine, thanks very much for joining us. To kick things off, can you please introduce yourself, telling us a little bit about your disability and what you do in your profession now?
Hi, my name's Catherine. I'm a paraplegic, T9, T10, level of injury complete. So nothing, no feeling or movement below waistline. Mm-hmm. And I had my injury at age 38, I suppose, too. So it was a major change in my life and adjusting, to life in a wheelchair. Yeah.
How did you have the injury? Can we ask?
I had a fall from a balcony, and so it was a bit traumatic, I suppose, but not for me because I don't remember it. So I was taken from Tamworth to Newcastle, mm-hmm. where I had initial surgery on my head from a head injury, and to relieve pressure on my brain. And then once it was stabilised, I went to North Shore.
Okay. Do you have any family, kids, all that kind of stuff at that age, at that time?
No.
Yeah, okay. So you're single?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And how did you find that and being sort of the early days after it? Who was around? Did you have people around? What was the process there? And
I've got an extremely good family and friend base, thank goodness. And so they were all popping in and out of down to Sydney, because the majority of them all live sort of up in this area from Narrabri to Tamworth. And so, it was a fair distance for everybody to come to travel, to see me. But my mum, she stayed with me the whole time that I was in hospital and at rehab. So she's I think a major factor in how I suppose how well I cope with everything, because she's always been a very practical, cool, calm, person, didn't panic. And so she made, my life with dealing with things, I suppose, just so much easier. And when I would have, I could have my meltdowns as such, and then she'd come in and straighten up everything and pick everything back up off the floor that I'd thrown, and we'd get on with it. So I think she was definitely a major part in how well you just handling and getting your mind around, I suppose, that the fact that your legs aren't working, and and
you're a different person, basically.
Yeah, totally. And I think it sort of it takes a while for you to get your head around that. Initially you're told that you don't have any movement in your legs, and that your life's going to be in a wheelchair but I think it sort of just takes little moments here and there that until you actually fully dawn on you that, well, holy crap, this is what my life's going to be like. And then trying to work out in your mind how it's going to work when you get home.
And your
I
mum
think
helped you. Your mum helped you with that as well.
Yeah, definitely, because she just didn't panic. I think when you're in rehab and especially rehab, you've got those other people that are in there with you, and they're all trying to adjust to their life being, whether they're just paraplegics or whether they're quads and stuff. But you would have people that their family members just sort of panicked at everything, every little thing that went wrong. It was it was just panic stations. And just sort of sitting back watching that sort of stuff go on, you could just see that affect the person themselves so much, and then just how they would deal with things. And it was because you just have to pick yourself up. Like, honestly, it's a matter of you just have to get on with it. It's hard, and there's a lot of people that are so much worse off than what I was, but you really do have to just keep going and try and be make them the best of life, I suppose. And those early days, it's really hard to work out that, and especially I suppose in rehab, because you've got your your physios, your nurses, your OTs, everybody's around you that you can just like call on, and they're there. It's then when you come home as well, I think, and especially to rural areas, depending on what your local community is, and then it's sort of like a really big holy crap of
adjustment. What
am I going to do, and how am I going to live, and
do you feel isolated when you first come home from all of those people around you to your own home? What does that feel like when you first go through the door, and then all of a sudden it's completely different to the hospital setting? It is pretty scary, I suppose, and it is very daunting. I went home to Narrabri, where my mum lived on a property. My sister and brother-in-law, they're on a property, and my friends were all on properties. So I went to stay with my sister and brother-in-law for a period of I'm not sure how long it was now, a couple of months maybe, until we were able to get bathroom modifications done and all that at home, at where mum lived. And so for me then, I was reliant totally on my sister and brother-in-law to get me anywhere, because
I suppose they live about 10k or so out of town, so it's not far, but it's still out of town. And so then I had a four-wheel drive myself. So just about everybody else in my whole world had four-wheel drives, and so I couldn't just jump in a vehicle and, easily and go anywhere. So I was then dependent on my brother-in-law to, help me get in the vehicle and take me anywhere. So it was a big thing for them also. I was conscious of not being a pain in the backside as such for them. I didn't want to be calling on him to take me everywhere all the time. So those initial few months until I was able to get a vehicle myself was, pretty, I suppose, isolating to that degree, because I was so restricted with
frustrating as well, probably.
Yeah, it is frustrating. Well, and especially because I'd always been such, extremely independent, sort of did what I wanted to do, went where I wanted to, I could just sort of pick up and go at a drop of a hat as such. If I wanted to go visit friends in Queensland or wherever, I just did that. So to come back to that and not be able just to go anywhere, wherever I wanted, it was really restricting. But I mean, I was extremely lucky that I had, the base that I had, I suppose. That
were you driving beforehand?
Yeah.
So like been driving kind of since you were young and all that kind of stuff, very comfortable with it.
Yeah.
Then were you I guess in all of these thought processes that was going on in those initial stages, at what point did you start thinking about, I need to be driving on my own? Was it right at the very beginning, or like was it even a thought process of driving? When did that sort of thought come in?
Yeah, I suppose hospital, when you're in the hospital, I suppose you're just sort of concentrating on, initially it was just being able to get up, and stay up for a period of time to be able to go to physio and, get up. And I had a goal of getting outside for so long, because, you'd get up and go to physio and then you'd just about pass out. So you'd be back in bed for the rest of the day, and so it took so long for me to even get up and get outside. So then, you just sort of get these little goals, I suppose, as you go along. But until I got to rehab, I suppose, and then you started in really with the OT and that, about working with your transfers and your, just sort of mobilising around the house, how to transfer across the bed and all that sort of stuff. And then they brought in the doing driving lessons to get my modified licence when I was down there.
Where was this?
At Royal Rehab.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So you got your licence back through Royal Rehab?
Yeah.
At that, before you actually went home?
Yes.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
They were the ones that Matt Caruana was talking. He saw as well.
Yeah, and it was
they're pretty famous here.
Well, and it, and looking back on it, I just thank goodness that I did do that, because like they'd just come and get me, and once I sort of learned how to get in the car, we did all that, and it was, a relatively easy process, I suppose, because you just had that support from them.
What do you think it would have been? What do you think it would have been like if you had to have waited until you got back to Tamworth? How do you think you would have gone in a comparison?
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly how it would have gone, because having somebody, I would have had to have had found somebody that had the modified car in the first place. So back then, I'm not even sure, what the situation was here. I don't think we would have had it in Narrabri, so I probably would have had to have been, travelling to Tamworth or somewhere else to have lessons in the modified vehicle, and then like to get your license as well. So yeah, much easier process to have it while I was down in Sydney, even though it was extremely terrifying driving in Sydney whilst learning how to, get your hand controls. I mean, I'd driven, I suppose, tractors and stuff like that over the years with hand controls, but just trying to have that, the reaction time was what the big thing that you have to learn, I suppose, with when you go back to hand controls, is that, fast acceleration or brake that you have to do. And so, yeah, oh God, it was terrifying when you were like on because I went around Silverwater and all that sort of thing around there, and 3 lanes of traffic, and I mean,
probably would have been hard enough as it was coming from Tamworth driving there.
Oh well, and that's, I mean, we've got traffic lights and stuff, but you just don't have the that
quantity of cars non-stop.
Yeah, totally.
Coming from Adelaide's bad enough. I find it difficult enough to drive in Sydney from Adelaide.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine what it's like from a rural township coming into Sydney.
Well, and then I suppose also it was like the little things of when we were driving around doing lessons, and we'd be poking along, and then he'd go, righto, just pull up over, down here when you can, and we'll park there and we'll just have a chat about things. And so we'd do that, and then he'd say, now back there where you did, so and so, whatever, you can't do that. That's not right. And I'm like, well, when did that rule come in? And he's like, oh, well, it's been in for quite a while. And I'm like, oh God, So I sort of there was all those little things of having been driving for a long time. Like I said, I was 38 when I had my injury, and so it was, I'd been merrily driving around country roads, probably, breaking a lot of little rules that nobody knows about. But so it was all of that side of things as well. But yeah, so then when I came home, I then just had to find out, sort of work out what kind of vehicle I wanted to get, or what suited me as such at that time, and then just organised hand controls. And
so what about in terms of that process? So first of all, at Royal Rehab, did you what did you have available to you? Was it like options, or how does it work with them in terms of getting you driving and controls and things like that?
Did you have a choice? Did you have a choice, or was it just one control system that you're able to try?
Back then, it was really only one control system that they had, like in a car.
Yep.
So.
And what style is that? What do you, and is it the same as what you're using now?
No, similar. Yeah, because it was just the like the basic
push pull type thing, or the radial ones.
No, just the push pull one.
Yeah, okay.
Because this was like 2008 that I did this as well. So yeah, so it was sort of basic, just push pull, and.
So that was also pre NDIS as well, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so that would have been interesting as well.
Yeah, and so as far as it was all sort of like I just worked it all out when I came home. So yeah, I had to sell my vehicle that I had, my 4-wheel drive, and then worked out what kind of vehicle I wanted. So we came over to Tamworth for a day, and literally just went around all the car yards and just looked at all the various sort of different vehicles.
What was your criteria that you were looking at?
The main thing was that it was like the height of, so I was slightly transferring in sort of on the same sort of level as my chair, and then I wanted like a wagon as such, so that I had the boot space to be able to put, chair all your gear that you cart around. So
this is where I get really excited as an OT. So when we're talking, there might be a few functional assessment questions here. I can't do anything about your license or anything else like that, so don't get scared.
yeah.
What in regards to heights? Your injuries T910, you said.
Yeah.
So you've got good shoulders and good upper body strength from the bottom of the rib cage up.
Yeah.
Yep. So do you use a slide board between?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we know a lot of people with a similar injury to yourself that wouldn't. What's the benefits for you of using a slide board?
Well, I don't have a skinny little backside, so purely for trying to get from your chair into your car, you've got to overcome quite a good gap.
Yep.
And
do you think that gap has changed with the newer cars since you got your license?
It's probably a little bit more, I think. So, rather than like the seat into the car, I suppose, it's a little bit sort of.
It's a bigger gap, isn't it?
Yeah, and it is good. It's a bloody big gap when, if you haven't got a little lightweight backside and legs and stuff that, you can throw around the place, then the last thing that I need to do is to go down the middle as such. So, which I did when I was learning how to transfer into the vehicle at rehab. And it's not a nice feeling when you go bum first down between your chair and the door and the car into that little triangle area that's there, and that's where I went with my legs in the air. And
I'd imagine it'll bloody hurt.
Well, it was
if you hit your head or something. It's a pretty awkward position. That's the other problem.
It was just it was more horrifying, the fact that then you're sitting there like going, oh my God, what am I going to do now? And then you've got to be able to get back up again. So, that's, and I think like that is a big thing for me because I live independently and that. So I've got to make sure that I'm getting from A to B. And like I say to a lot of people, I might not necessarily be the best person at transferring, but as long as I get there in one piece, I'm good.
Now you mentioned a wagon. That's what you got right from the start, was it? A wagon?
Yeah. Okay.
So how did you get your wheelchair? So you've transferred yourself into the driver's seat. Yep. What do you do with your wheelchair then? What's your process? Because it's different for lots of people. What's your process?
Yeah, so I've got like a rigid frame, and so then I just pull my wheels off, fold her up, pull her in over the top of me, and it sits on the passenger side when I'm by myself. If people are with me, they just put it in the boot part of the car.
Have you explored?
Sorry, go on.
Yeah, I was just going to say, have you explored other options in regards to boot loaders and things like that are available nowadays?
So I've looked at. I haven't gone into it as such. Like I know they're available, and it could be something that happens down the track, I suppose.
Have you seen those robotic arm types things? There's a couple of products
that come out of the boot and around. Yeah.
I'm just thinking that something like that. Yeah, well, I guess my what I'm also thinking is, and the question which is I'm trying to figure out what to ask is how have the products evolved, if that makes sense? So are you still using the same hand controls, transfer board? Have you had to change anything, and then I guess, is that one of the things that you've been thinking, assistance with that as well?
Yeah. Okay. So I haven't changed anything, and at this stage I think I'm probably going to look into that in over the next 12 months or so, for two reasons. I've got I do have a 4-wheel drive motor chair that I use on the farm or going to polocross events and horse events and stuff like that. So
X8, is it? A Mobility X8? Is that what you've got, or something
yeah,
similar?
yeah,
Yeah, really popular, those, the Mobility
yeah.
X8s
And,
for country,
yeah,
rural living.
totally brilliant it's just been fantastic. But so I've transported it just on a box trailer on behind the car. So, but I've been sort of thinking, over the last sort of couple of years, I suppose, of being able to really do that independently, because at the moment, like, I sort of need assistance, help to load my trailer, especially. And also, it's easier if I've got other people to help me to unload or load the X8. But so I've sort of been going down that road of, what do I do? And do I have to look at buying a van and then
Self-driving type thing from the chair? Is that what you're thinking?
Well, just being able to, I haven't really known of what I've been thinking, because I've sort of going, okay, so I'd have to be able to load my X8. So I've sort of nearly got to be able to be in it to load it. But then I've got to be able to still get into the passenger seat and drive. I've still got to then be able to get my manual chair in as well, because I use it on a daily basis. And so I sort of was just going, oh my goodness, this is going to, take a fair bit of working out and possibly quite a fair bit of modifications to enable me to do these sort of things. And so I was sort of going, it was just a bit too much. And then the thought of having to buy a vehicle as well, that's, if you haven't got the modifications or in a vehicle that you can buy that would suit you, to get them done, you've got to buy pretty much a new vehicle, which is, it's a hell of a lot of money. So I had seen a couple of years ago when the guys came up from Mobility into Tamworth and did a session with a lot of therapists and support coordinators. We went and things like that, and they had the things on the car, the different modifications as such in the vehicle. And we were talking about the Chariot, that they didn't have it there, but we were sort of talking about it. But so it's like the little trailer that goes on behind.
If you're listening to this, go back and listen to Eli's interview. We talked about the Chariot in the interview with Eli. He utilised one for a similar size chair, but it's the weight capacity that you'd need to be really careful with, that one.
Absolutely. And that's what stopped me in it, because of the weight capacity was sort of right on the.
But with the Chariot also, isn't that sort of similar to the box trailer situation anyway? Like, you still have to get, into your manual chair, and so it doesn't seem like it's the best solution.
Well, I think though, for me, I'm sort of going down the track of, and having recently just talked to the boys again when they were up in Tamworth, and they had the Chariot, and I was like sitting there going, this is what I think I want, but I don't think it can handle my chair. And they were looking at increasing the weight capacity of it. And so, but I also sat there and I just said to them, but I need to be able to load this myself. I need it to work so that I can actually put it on and off my vehicle. And which, I think I think I can do it. I'd have to actually trial it, but I think if I can get that that sort of with the weight capacity and everything, it's going to be an option for me that's a lot more flexible, and to be able to load my chair onto it and off I go.
Sounds good. So with the car modifications, I mean, just to swing back a little bit to the original one, and if you've had any done since then, I guess also being in a regional area, how did you find that process of getting the products, the car modified? Did you have it done locally? Did you have to travel? Like, what was all that about?
Yeah,
and have you since done it since the first time as well?
Yeah, no, I just had it done in Tamworth.
Okay.
And I suppose because it was only the hand controls at that stage, so it wasn't a major modification, so it was sort of an easy process to get it done.
And was it like because I know in Tamworth there's a couple of engineering sort of shops. Was it through those, or was it just like somebody you knew, or was
no,
it?
It was through one of the engineering shops, because I knew I had to get it done, like it has to be certified.
Yeah.
So I did all that, organised all that, and did that. But yeah, because it's sort of a pretty basic sort of function that I've got, I haven't changed it at all. But I'm sort of looking at, possibly upgrading it a bit, or looking at the different options available now.
So the car and the control, just to clarify, it's the same one that you've had since the beginning. Okay, so yeah. I guess, and as I was sort of pointing out before, pre-NDIS is when you sort of got this all. When NDIS came out, and we'll get into a little bit, and you work within the NDIS, I guess, so you understand how that all works.
Yeah.
Did you feel like there is more options for you on the table and it's better and you can explore it, or like was it just not much different for you, if that makes sense?
Well, I think for me, because I'm not all about all the bells and whistles. I'm just glad that if it goes and it's reliable and it works, and that's my major boxes ticked as such. I think now you've got so many more options, and to be able to look at the different options, even just for hand controls, like of what's available.
Would you consider another? This is an interesting, I guess, thing. You've been using that one. How long has it been since you've been using the hand control? 2008. Yeah. So what, like 12 years or so? 12, 13 years?
Yep.
So one of the common things we get, I guess, in the workshop side of things is people will come and go, in your position, going, well, I've been using this since day one and I'm just going to get the same thing. And often we like to challenge them to try multiple different things, because they might find they've been sacrificing a lot or compensating, and they don't even really realize that, because they just, like, as you said, at the time, they were sold the idea that, hey, well, this is all there is, just get used to it.
Yeah.
And but now, as you just noted, because of NDIS, there's so many more options. Like, is that something that you've thought about? Like,
yeah, absolutely. And because mainly I do know that when I've got to be careful when I do long trips. So say, for instance, if I'm driving from here to Sydney, by the time I sort of start hitting the like the freeway, and especially once I get to sort of off the freeway and into Sydney, because you sort of got to hold that hand control all the time, then I can get like a really good pain in my shoulder. And so definitely I think if I could get a different sort of controls, that so I'm not putting so much reliance on that one arm, I suppose, because it's not so bad if I'm doing long distances out west, because you can just put cruise control on and off you go, and then you can give those arms, you can swap over your arms a bit and get a bit of a break from that. But yeah, if I'm on it all the time for a long period of time, I can get a really good it's like someone sticking a knife in my shoulder. So,
and that's your hand control arm?
Yeah.
Yeah, from an OT point of view, you're holding tension in that arm, you're pulling, against that hand control, you're holding tension in there, and those muscles are just using up all the sugar, and they're in agony. They're crying out, and under a static hold like that for a prolonged period of time, that can be really debilitating and really unsafe. So it is one of the reasons why these upgrades are sometimes warranted. The other thing that I wanted to ask was, your hand control would be on the right hand side of the steering wheel?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you use a spinner knob in your left hand, or do you steer without one?
Oh, no, I do have it. I use it. I mean, it's mainly I just use it really only for, turning in tight parking and stuff like that, or in your in car parks when you've got sharp turns and stuff.
Where's your spinner knob placed? Is it placed at that 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock type of place?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, about the 10 o'clock.
If we think about the steering wheel as a clock face, yeah. And when you take your hand off of the spinner knob, when you're driving these longer distances, where would you put your hand on the steering wheel when you're driving those longer distances?
Probably around the 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
Maybe just a bit lower.
Yep.
To a degree.
Yep. Yeah, that's really common. But that 7 o'clock type of area, if we think about the steering wheel as a clock face, 7 o'clock, or some people even put their hand up at just past 12 o'clock. So it's up the top of the steering wheel. And we've spoken about this in other episodes. It's that camber of the road. And we'll probably, Ali and I will probably break down some of these things in our follow-up episode. So if you want to know more about the benefits of different spinner knob positions and hand controls, we'll break that down in our follow-up episode coming up. But we want to know more about you, Catherine. Catherine, you're working with the NDIS now, or in the NDIS system?
Yeah, within the NDIS system, yeah.
And your role in that system?
So I'm a support coordinator. So assist people with their NDIS plans to gain support in whether it's providers or following up, getting them a new OT, or say, for instance, if and I mean, there's a difference with your OTs, obviously, with levels of experience or what you can do. And so, there's some obviously are more based with equipment. Others are, you can do with vehicle mods or house mods and things like that. So it's just trying to find out what sort of the best option is, or whether like we've got to get someone else to do some assessments for the client, and things like that. So it's a
on that question of the OTs, do you have I mean, and even with other parts of the services that you're using, that people are using, do you have often cases where you're helping people find someone alternate because they can't get along or something like that, or is it normally just people?
Yeah, absolutely. You've got a sort of a wide range, I suppose. In sometimes they just don't get along, or you might have had something that's been declined, and so therefore, the person that's been the assessment or the therapist maybe just doesn't have enough experience in the high level sort of stuff that you're trying to get. So, you might have to go to somebody else that's got more experience or something like that to, if you've got complex modifications or whatever that, you're trying to get.
Where do you see the things, like, I guess people have, I mean, when you watch media and so on, you often get highlighted, big sort of wild stories and negative stories and things like that. And when we do these interviews, we often see a lot of the positive side of things that people have found, rather than the big sort of issues that they've had. So from your perspective, what are you finding are there any common themes of issues that people have, and in terms of products, OTs, or any part of it, funding applications, and any general advice around that?
I suppose in the NDIS, the big thing is that you have your goals that are set out, and so you really need to have a good think about what you want to achieve in that next 12 months or possibly longer with the plans, but initially, especially in that, what your life, I suppose, is going to look like, and what help in what areas you're going to need. And then you've got to be able to then justify asking for what you're asking for. And so the OT or, and your physios and therapists that are assisting you have to really understand your lifestyle, I think, and that's the big thing. And then they have to be able to explain that and justify the request to the NDIS, because say for instance with me living in a rural area and like going to farms and showgrounds and polocrosse fields out in the back of the back paddock sort of thing, you've got to try and explain that life to somebody that's sitting in Sydney or wherever, because planners can be wherever at the moment, and so they've got to be able to explain that lifestyle, I suppose. And that's the big thing, is that especially if that person doesn't have a clue about like rural life, for instance, and living on a farm and getting about and things like that, then we've got to be able to explain that and justify then why you are asking for a four-wheel drive
modification,
and things like that. And I sort of got the four-wheel drive, but then I also have a Baytech, which Power Assist, which I put on the front of my manual chair, which gives me that ability, I suppose, around Tamworth here to take my dog for a run, or I can whiz over town and
longer distances basically.
And or even if I'm going somewhere for the day, for a day trip, I can put it in, and then I'm not reliant on then friends or whoever that are with me to push me up a hill or something, or just.
But even like you've mentioned, Catherine, the amount of energy that you expend trying to get in and out of the car, and how much time that actually takes, and having a power assisted wheelchair, whether it's a motorbike front wheel or whether it's a smart drive at the back of a static chair, fixed frame chair. That's really important that the NDIS needs to understand, because I really thank you for explaining that the OT's responsibility of explaining the whys, why do we need this, is really, really, really important. And
and painting that picture of that lifestyle, I think a lot of it comes to the communication process and method, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And trying to picture that lifestyle. So one question I've got around that, which I guess seems like it's going to be challenging, is, well, going back to what you were saying about like the beginning or the early days, like how does somebody know what their lifestyle is going to be? Because isn't their mind full of a lot of confused situations, and there's probably under attack in terms of creating a picture, and then like, you know what I mean? Like, so wouldn't it be very difficult for, like, can you get support around people helping you to create that picture, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I think initially it's so hard, because you sort of have this picture in your head in a way of, I'm going to go home and I'm going to go back to work, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. But then the reality of when you actually do, go home and it's like, oh my goodness, this.
Yeah.
I
mean, I when you were saying some of those things,
Yeah. And
When you're saying some of those things, it was just interesting because I broke my foot a couple of months ago, and I mean, it was only a couple of weeks that I was immobile, but I walked in the house and I looked at my stairs and I was like, shit, I didn't even think about this. And when I was out in the hospital or wherever I was like, I'm just gonna get home and start moving around. I walked in the door and I was like, oh crap.
Yeah.
I need to get upstairs.
Yeah, and it's just the reality, I suppose, of living with it, because it's always like, you know, if you're going out for dinner, and it'd be like for, you know, even for work, you know, and they'd be working out, you know, Christmas parties and everything like that, and it'd be like, okay, it's not all about me, but it is about me, because we need to go somewhere that's accessible, that I can actually get in the front door. And then, you know, do they have disabled, like the toilets and stuff like that, you know, or am I only going to be able to go for a couple of hours and then I'll have to go home, sort of thing, or what, you know, and so, and even just for visiting, you know, your friends and people, you know, they invite you around for a coffee, but you can't actually get in the front door, or, you know, so everything's always revolving around, you know, can I actually get in the front door of places, you know, that's sort of like the first thing in your mind. So then having even, you know, getting your power assists and stuff like that within the NDIS, it just changes your life. It really does. And it just, it gives you back your freedom a lot, you know, to a big degree, because, you know, without the power assist, for me, you know, life is a big, you know, different outlook, I suppose.
I've got a couple of questions. If I don't know what I'm going to be doing in 12 months. I'm not somebody that can plan 12 months ahead. I would really struggle with that with the NDIS. So so if I wanted, let's say my car dies, okay, and I needed to upgrade in the 12-month period, okay, and I needed to get new modifications into a new vehicle, what advice would you have? And it's not written into my plan. What advice would you give a participant if something along that line, something that's unpredictable happens, or they've had a change of mindset, maybe they've moved into a new home over those 12 months and something like this comes up where they can't get in and out of their car in their new garage, or that something's happened to their car over the 12 months. What advice can you give to somebody who has a change of circumstances within that 12 months? Is it just about being patient until the next plan review, or is there other stuff that can be done?
Now, there is other stuff that can be done. I mean, you can put in your change of circumstances requests and things like that. So, you know, that there's always options, I suppose. Your vehicles are a little bit different, you know, because I mean, if your whole vehicle blows up, then you're in a bit of trouble, because if you've got to buy a new vehicle, if you're buying the same vehicle again, you know, then it'd be sort of a bit easier, because you know that sort of vehicle suits you and stuff like that. It's when you start changing things that you have to do your investigating. And, you know, and I think that's the big thing that I would say, is that you need to, you know, investigate your options, and trial things, because, you know, your OT is going to have to trial equipment, or, you know, come in and look at your house and look at the different options available and everything, because they've got to justify, you know, why this doesn't work. And this one did, and things like that. So you've got to trial different options. And I think also too is that a lot of the time you're not going to know if something's going to work or not until you try it. You know,
and use it, even using it for a longer term. Because sometimes when you're doing trials, you're excited, and you know, you might be trying to impress somebody, or you might even be tired, you know, like there's so many different aspects that can happen there as well.
Absolutely. And really, you've got to you've got to know that you can still do things on your worst day, I suppose, you know, like, because when you can't physically do things, it, you know, it does stop you in your tracks. So,
So my next question, which is on the same type of frame as the last question I had, but if somebody was starting to think about driving, maybe they've come home in a similar situation to yourself and they want it written into their plan, or maybe it's a 16-year-old who's excited about getting their license, what advice can you give to somebody as a support coordinator? What advice can you give to somebody who wants to explore driving? What advice should they be thinking about in regards to their plan, and how can they move forward in regards to finding that support that they need?
So you've sort of got to get an assessment to say that you can do the driving lessons and everything like that. So you've got to get the sign off from that. So, I mean, also, you know, I think there's your medical forms and stuff like that you've got to, you know, get signed off on. And then yes, to find out if you've got somebody locally that actually can do driving lessons with you, and if there is a modified vehicle that you can do all of that on, because, you know, we've got ones here in Tamworth and everything that do it, but I mean, for your, you know, possibly for smaller rural areas, especially, you know, they're going to possibly have to travel to a bigger place to be able to do it.
Yeah, we spoke about that in one of our other
Yeah.
interviews with Jack, didn't we, Ellie, where we
Yeah.
spoke to a guy that lives on that outer fringe of Adelaide, well, even a little bit further, and there's just nothing available in his area. Everyone's located close to Adelaide. So he had to go
It's a
through
bit harder.
the process of getting his car before he got his license when he was on his L's.
Yeah, and I think though too, you know, if you sort of can, because if you can learn to drive also on what you're going to be using, would be easier as well, rather than having to change, you know, after you've learnt that, because that, you know, that's still an adjustment that you've got to do then if you're going to be learning on a new or a different sort of system. So it would be easier if you get your license and everything.
So I'm thinking we can start to kind of wind it up a little bit. But I wanted to bring something, I guess, highlight something. You're saying you're working as a coordinator within the NDIS. Were you always working within this industry, or did you, and what led you to that? Is it an inspiration, or is it just how did you end up in this position?
So I was in banking all my life, and so was still with the bank when I had my injury, and I worked with them for, you know, a fair few years afterwards. But I suppose it's probably been out of the bank now for about 5 years. I've worked with spinal cord for 3.5 years now. So I suppose just I fell into it in a way, I suppose, because the lady that was working in the organisation before me, she was retiring, and so she was looking for somebody to come in, and so yeah, just I suppose, you know, partly because I have a spinal cord injury, that, you know, it's a bit of it's a good part of my job, I suppose, in that it's easy to relate to people a lot more, you know, and so when I'm talking to my clients, you know, they know that they can just say whatever, because I know I understand to, you know, point of what they're going through, and what they're talking about, because I think that's a big part of things, is that it's really hard to explain your life in a chair and the effects of everything on your body, and just, and understanding the pain levels and things like and spasms and all that side of things that goes along with our life. And that another spinal cord injury person, just understands what you're going through. And so it's a lot easier to talk to people, I find, about it. So, that's been, I suppose, a great thing about my job too.
You'd be sought after, I would think.
So you're still in there for the long haul by the sounds of it then.
Oh, well, yeah.
Oh, sounds good.
It is.
I mean, it's good. I think what you're doing is amazing, because I think also the fact that the users can feel more comfortable explaining their situation, whereas maybe in some cases, if the person, as you said, wasn't in the wheelchair, the support coordinator was in the wheelchair, look, I could imagine that if I was in a wheelchair and I went up to someone who was able-bodied, instantly I'd be thinking, what the F do you know? How on earth are you going to help me? And whether you like it or not, those thoughts are just going to be crossing your mind. So I think it's really cool that people in Tamworth can have this resource.
I think too is that I like to try and you've got to try and educate people, I think, because, it's not people don't be ignorant on purpose, I'd like to think. It's just because unless you know somebody and directly and have a lot to do with a person that's got whatever they've got going, whether it's cancer or what sort of form of disability, unless you know somebody and are spending a lot of time with them on a personal basis, you don't really get what they go through on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
And I say to people, not walking is the least of my worries as such, because it's all the other things that go along with having a spinal cord injury that affect my life probably more really on a day-to-day basis than actually just not walking as such. So even though that is what people see as me in a wheelchair, they see that well, you just don't, you just can't walk. But like I say, that's the least of your worries in a way, I suppose. So
that sounds cool. That's
cool.
really insightful, and for me, that's where we should end it on that note. I think it actually is a good way to round this up. Catherine, you don't get away with it though. We always ask a question at the end of each of our interviews about driving. For each interview participant, we ask that, well, driving is more than just, I'm going to get from home to work. The cars are more than that for a lot of people. What's something that you do in your car that is maybe a little bit unique, a little bit different than other people don't know about, whether it's a game or what do you use your car for other than just to and from work?
Well, God, I don't know. I suppose going in rural areas and everything like that, and I suppose going to polocross and things where, like I say, you're on showgrounds and whatever, your big thing is that you don't always have toilets available. And so, it's one thing that I always carry is like a spare, like leg bag, bag as such. And it'll always be, yes, that I suppose that's what you
use the car for.
The car
mobile
gets
bathroom.
used for. Yeah, which sounds a bit gross, but it is what it is, and so that's it. But
that's why we ask these questions. We are always learning. Cars can be used for so many things, and on this occasion, thank you for sharing that, because a lot of people wouldn't think about that. And sometimes I've actually asked for window tinting in some of our NDIS applications for vehicle modifications. It's been declined because it's a everyday necessity. Somebody can go and put window tinting onto their car as a feel and a look, But in your case, having a little bit of privacy to be able to do some toileting, and for some other people, it is a big ordeal in regards to change of clothes and bits and pieces as well. And having a little bit of privacy in their car can make a massive difference. And I encourage, if NDIS are listening to this, somebody that's approving bits and pieces, that something as simple as window tinting can make a massive difference to somebody's ability to live their life the way that they need to.
Yeah, and I think that sort of comes back to, like I said, when understanding somebody's lifestyle and, you know, and what we have to do to just to get by. And, you know, you go, I say that all the time. I'm like, oh, well, I'll just have to work out how to do it, you know, because there's no other option, you know. So that's a big thing, is that, you know, sometimes it's just it's working out how to do things rather than the fact that you can't.
Yeah. Sounds
All
good.
right. Well, let's wind it up. That's it for this episode. We thank everybody that listens into this. We thank them for their listening. If you like this episode or any other episode, make sure that you press the like button and the share button, and if you can, put a rating on it as well. A massive thank you to you, Catherine.
Thank you.
If there's a way that would you be happy to share your contact details if people wanted to get in contact with you?
Yeah, sure.
You don't have to do that here. What we can do is put it in the show notes, and people can or contact us, and we can put that up for people.
Yep, sure.
Yep. That sounds good. And as we say in every episode, if you have any queries about what you can do and what will work for you, get in contact with your local OT or mobility dealer and set yourself up with a trial. The discussion today demonstrated once again, trials is what's important. They really put you in the driver's seat. And more trials, more practice. That means you'll understand what your lifestyle is going to look like, what things are going to be, and how they're going to work. So yeah, let's do it.
All right. Thank you very much, Catherine, and everybody else for listening in.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks very much. See ya.
Thanks for listening to the Drive Able podcast with Brad Williams and Ali Akbarian. If you like what you've heard, make sure you like, rate and subscribe. It really does make a massive difference. If you or anyone you know would like to share a story about driving with a disability, or you would like to get in contact, find the show notes, or find the resources mentioned in this episode, you can find us on Facebook. Just search @Drive Able Podcast for more information.